Hi, it's Larold, and with the recent announcement from GGG that the next league isn't going to drop until January, I think now is a perfect time to take a critical look back at Settlers League, basically to do a league review. This is something I've been trying to do with each league. I like the idea of creating a series of videos, reviewing each league while it's still fresh in my mind, and being able to look back and see how I felt about them at the time is good. I think it's fun and cool. So just to start with the PoE news, it's not great. We are going to have to wait until December for PoE 2 early access, and unfortunately that means, based on this post, that the next PoE 1 league is going to be released in 2025. They're saying late January, think late January, which means that it might fall into February, but you never know. Maybe it could come forward a little bit, like third week of January or something. Still though, this is a bummer. I would have absolutely just accepted another month or whatever of delay on PoE 2 in order to get another PoE 1 league this year. I think a lot of people would say, push, basically flip-flop them. But GGG, I guess, just absolutely felt that they need to launch PoE 2 in 2024. Probably need to for financial reasons, and this is the only way to do that, so it is what it is. And that does mean we've only gotten 2 new leagues in 2024, as this post says. We're only on 2 expansions this year, with Settlers of Kalgur being the second one. That means the Necropolis League was, the first of 2, and that's a pretty huge bummer, but we are at least getting a fresh start league with a bit of a twist. The ability to use just the upsides from the Lantern of Aramor from Necropolis League, which was the best part of that league by far. So I'm actually pretty hyped about this. I think this will be a fun way to kind of tide ourselves over until PoE 2 early access launches in the middle of December. And also, just to spoil my conclusion of this review, Settlers League is probably the best league ever. Probably. I think if there was ever going to be a 6-month league, I guess this is the best possible version of that happening. The best possible version of a bad situation. So as always, let's get into the review, but first, like and subscribe. Alright, so I'll start with kind of a brief recap on the base mechanics of the league and what changed with patch 3.25, and so I'll just start by going to King's March, which was the big league mechanic of Settler League. It's a town. You build it up. It's a bit like the WoW Garrison from Warlords of Draenor. It's a bit like a mobile game. It's a bit like Farmville. You can grow crops over here. You can mine. You mark ore in maps, and you can then set guys to mine it. You can set other guys to smelt it. You can use those, take all of those, the herbs, the ore, and so on, and send them to ports that are kind of located around the world with a group of shippers. And this can bring back lots of currency, with the crop shipping mechanic working as a semi-reliable source of mirrors of Kalandra and mirror shards, certainly more so of tattoos and divine orbs, but I have gotten, I think, 5 or 6 mirror shards this league just from this league mechanic. So these 4 all came during the time that I was without power, so there was just legitimate currency farming while offline. There are also map devices you can set up for NPCs to run maps. You can just throw up to a dozen maps into these map devices and just set teams of NPCs to run them. And this is a really good way to unload a bulk supply of tier 16 maps if you have an overabundance of them. Like with shipping, they can kind of bring you back just whatever. Sometimes your guys will bring you back divine orbs. I've definitely seen Reddit posts of people bringing back mirrors, although I haven't had that experience myself. More often they'll do league mechanics and they'll do a blight and bring back gold oils. Cool. This is a league so nice it farms itself. Now, in order to facilitate all this, you need gold, and gold comes from everywhere in the game. You do actually have to play the game, though, to get the gold, and in terms of how it actually works, when you kill enemies, they drop stuff, and some of the garbage gear that they would have dropped that wouldn't have gotten past your loot filter is instead converted into gold. That gold is effectively the long-awaited Loot 2.0. Now, the drop rate of gold scales with item rarity, and I've really taken advantage of that this league. I've been using gold flasks on pretty much all of my builds. Everything I've done has pretty much involved wearing a gold flask and going for more rarity. Gold is also used for the currency exchange, and that is probably the best feature that's ever been added to Path of Exile. It's through Faustus the Financier. He'll also appear not just in King's March, but in your hideout, and it's an auction house for buying and selling currencies in exchange for other currencies. It's right in the name. It's the currency exchange. You could buy chaos orbs for divine orbs or vice versa, and there's some pretty good like just quality of life built into it, being able to flip flop your search options by control clicking. Just a really, really well built system. Like I said, probably the best feature that GGG has ever added to the game. I think it would be hard to argue that anything is better than the currency exchange. It's just a massive success, and it will obviously be continuing forward with future leagues. I would bet literally anything on it. My right eye. Now, in terms of other changes that happened throughout the league, this league was also the long-awaited Melee Rework League, and that was a smashing success. Ancestral Totems were completely removed from the game, and a lot of that base power was just baked into all of the melee skills, which has been really good for the game. Rage and Banners got significant reworks. I think the Rage rework was really successful. The Banner rework, it was kind of okay. I started the league out as a Ground Slam Berserker, and I eventually switched to Earthshatter Berserker, and I killed all the Ubers and farmed a bunch of tier 17s with that, and it was a pretty fun league starter. I won't play it again, but it was a fun time. Not tanky. Lightning Strike has once again risen to the top of just kind of all builds, really, and for good reason. It's just a really powerful skill. It also has nice MTX. It's pretty versatile. There are 3 different ascendancies that make it work really well. Just to pull those up on PoE Ninja, they are Slayer, obviously, and then Trickster and Warden are all making Lightning Strike work really well. Slayer has completely overtaken Champion as the premier duelist ascendancy. Champion kind of got nerfed coming into this league with the banner rework and with just a lot of the changes to Melee. It really has fallen out of favor. There's almost no one playing Champion anymore, and, you know, that's kind of unfortunate, but Gladiator did get a rework, and that has definitely boosted it as well. So with Slayer and Gladiator both being really amazing ascendancies, it kind of makes sense that Champion would have fallen off. Raider was replaced with Warden. As I mentioned, Warden is also a pretty good ascendancy. Pathfinder kind of lost a bit of juice. I was going to save this for later, but I'll just jump to it now. The attack speed flask suffix was stealth removed. That wasn't in patch notes. It just suddenly was gone, and so that really hurt Pathfinder for any sort of attack-based build like Toxic Rain. I think pretty much the only Pathfinder builds that I would want to play anymore that do still attack would be just like Viper Strike and a Mamba, something that doesn't care about attack speed at all. Otherwise, I really would prefer to just play like Casters as Pathfinder or play Deadeye or Warden if I'm going to play a Ranger. Base defenses like Armor and Evasion got a pretty hefty rework in this league, and a lot of new high-level bases were added to the game. Base life rolls on rare gear were also increased. This kind of made a lot of uniques that people had used for defensive purposes be a lot less valuable. And then also alternate defenses like Fizz Take and Azelli were either massively nerfed or outright removed in a lot of cases, and this is another thing that really hurt Toxic Rain Pathfinder, you know, being able to super juice a Taste of Hate and make it be worth a massive amount of Fizz taken as cold. With that being completely removed, now it's worthless, and that really cut into a lot of Pathfinder defensive value, which, given that was kind of the build that was like my whole thing, you know, this definitely hurt this league for me, with Pathfinder just kind of taking a big hit on their defense and their offense. It really didn't feel that great. Increased item quantity was also removed from the game entirely, with rarity now functioning as the only magic find stat. Ritual was revamped, and the King in the Mist fight from Affliction League was made available via an itemized key. A lot of individual scarabs have been reworked, so farm strategies throughout this league have felt fresh and different from Necropolis League, but the same basic philosophy from that Necropolis League scarab rework is still in play. There was a 6th map device slot added for even juicier farm strategies, and that's something I've really enjoyed. There were a collection of stripped-down versions of Affliction, Sentinel, and Calandra League mechanics that can randomly appear in maps. We're talking just like the Wildwood will show up, but it's not nearly as valuable as it was in the past. Random Sentinel. Sentinels can just appear at the start of your maps, and then random Calandra mirror ring options can show up. You know, nothing all that fancy, really. There were a lot of good quality of life improvements. Like, I'll show off my favorite one. If I just take out like several Orbs of Unmaking here, I can very quickly transfer all those back into my bank with a stash tab with a single click just by holding control and right clicking. You know, that's like such a small thing, but it is really, really amazing quality of life compared to the wrist strain that used to exist. And like, I do literally think it is worth talking about just because it was such a good quality of life thing that people had requested for so long. And then finally, I think in the big list of changes, tier 17s were substantially nerfed, although there was a little bit of nerfing to tier 17s, but not nearly enough at the start of the league. That actually occurred like a week or 2 or 3 into the league when they really rolled out the nerfed bat for tier 17s, and I think they're in great shape now, but I do think it actually took them a little too long to get to that. So in terms of evaluating things, I think the best way to do it is just to kind of go rapid fire here and talk about what I found to be good, bad, or just kind of mid. And I wrote down a list of things I think were important in this league, and I'm just going to kind of run through them all and give them like a number from 1 to 10, I think is a good approach to do it. So in terms of the league mechanic, it's huge. It's really ambitious. You know, there's the ore that you just tap in the map, so it doesn't really slow you down at all. I like that aspect of it. The herbs and the farming, I should say, and kind of the shipping, I think is really good. There were definitely some issues with tuning on like gold costs. The mappers are extremely expensive. There's also some disenchanted guys that I just completely skipped over when I was talking about the town. That was a little expensive and initially very rewarding through shipping, and then kind of nerfed later on to not be as valuable. You know, there's a lot going on. Ultimately, I think it's not perfect, but I do think it's really good. So I would give it like an 8 out of 10, I think is a very fair rating. I think it's pretty great. Not totally without flaws, but pretty great. As for the league bosses, I think they get like a 3. I think there are 3 of them. They have pretty good voice lines, pretty good animations and stuff. I think that the like technical aspects of making the bosses are pretty good. I never died to any of these bosses. I never found them challenging at any point, even when my characters were trash. They just really aren't like mechanically complex or very interesting bosses. The only real issue with them is I did have a couple of crashes that caused some pretty horrible, like you lose a lot of progress in the league mechanic if you have a crash. And so that was really the biggest problem with the league bosses, but it's a pretty nasty problem. So definitely didn't like that. I made a special mention here of Svalin. That's a unique shield that I'm wearing on my Lightning Strike Slayer. It is a lucky block chance shield, and you know it does have minus max chance, but even so, if you get up to that lower 65% max block and spell block chance, with that being lucky, you are way over the block cap. You are really, really close to like total immunity. So I would give this like a 10 out of 10. This is one of the strongest uniques they've ever put in. It's pretty common too. So just an absolutely insane god tier unique that I can't imagine will like stick around, or if it does, it'll definitely be in a nerfed form. But I've really loved it this league. Really, really big fan of Svalin. Gold, I would also give a 10. I think it fully provides what they were going for with Loot 2.0, gives you a reason to want to kill stuff, gives you something from everything you kill, which is pretty good. It gives another form of farm strategy beyond just like optimizing for currency or scarabs or uniques. There is now another thing you can optimize for, and I really do like farming for gold. I like being able to convert gold directly into currency with shipping or with sending guys to run maps. So that has also been fun. So I have absolutely loved gold just as a mechanic on its own. And then the currency exchanges, I mean, just like, I don't know, 100 out of 10. It is the best thing they've ever added. I have absolutely nothing negative to say about it. I would say the melee rework would probably be a 10 out of 10, but Lightning Strike has kind of sucked up a lot of the oxygen from the rest of the melee builds, of which there are many that are good. Like, I found the Ground Slam and Earthshatter Berserkers to be awesome. There are other builds, Lightning, Molten Strike of the Zenith, Juggernaut is great. Tons of other builds. Lacerate Gladiator has been really, really strong. There are lots of really strong melee builds, but Lightning Strike is definitely overshadowing them. So I would say that's probably the biggest failure of the melee rework. Otherwise, I think it's been pretty great. All right, 6-month league. We're giving that whatever the lowest possible rating is, 0. One mechanic that was added, the Nameless Seer, being just a guy who can pop up randomly in your maps. He allows you to scry div cards. Basically, you talk to him and you say, like, I want to take all the div cards that are in this map and make them apply to another map as well. So you can farm a map that maybe you don't like the layout, but you like the div cards, and you just do that until you find the Nameless Seer, and then you can take take those div cards and put them onto a map that you like the layout, but not the div cards. And this is such a god tier edition. 10 out of 10, absolutely love it. I think the only thing that I would maybe want is something where you can like force that in. So, you know, maybe that's like a 9 out of 10, but it's pretty great. As for the tier 17 map rebalance, I still think there are some bad mods in tier 17s. I still think there's some stuff that's overtuned. I really didn't like how long it took them to roll that out, but I think for the most part, tier 17 maps are in a much better state than they were before. All right, as for the 6th map device slot, you know, I've been really happy about how this has opened up a lot more farm possibilities, just more ability to juice stuff, add more pack size, you know, a lot of extra value added through that. The only issue with it was that it was bugged for a while in the league. I think like the first 3 or 4 weeks or something, it was bugged and not actually doing stuff. But I do think it is definitely a good thing now that it works well. So I would say like, you know, 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10. I think it's pretty good. The Magic Find nerfs. A lot of people would definitely not like this. You know, I knew a lot of the hardcore, most insane farmers would definitely be upset about this. For me, I've actually really liked it. I normally hated the way that Magic Find worked in this game prior to this league, where you basically just had like a collection of unique items that really, really sucked. And so you had to play a build that did like god tier amounts of damage and was a total glass cannon to compensate for the fact that you were wearing a bunch of garbage gear. I have actually enjoyed the Magic Find nerfs, and I would say that they're like a 6 or a 7 out of 10 for me. Let's say 6 out of 10, because they definitely took something away from people that I know that they liked, but I have really enjoyed them. Affliction for a while added just like no discernible increase in quantity of stuff, and it definitely made mobs much harder. Like, I actually think it was harder than Affliction League's Affliction was, while also basically having no reward. So my initial rating on Affliction would be like 1. It has been nerfed in terms of difficulty and buffed in terms of reward multiple times. I have run some Affliction Wildwoods when I've zoned into maps a handful of times just to like kind of see, and I can't really tell a difference. So I would say that for me, Affliction, I think, has been not very successful. I would say it's about a 3 out of 10, nothing special. The Sentinels, on the other hand, I have found to be pretty successful. I think they're real simple. You zone into a map, sometimes there's a Sentinel there, you pick it up, you use it, it adds some extra stuff into your maps, gives you more rewards for monsters. It's pretty basic, but that's why we loved Sentinel League, and I would say it's like an 8 out of 10. Really solid. All right, I moved to King's March. The background was kind of whatever for me. It was a little distracting in the hideout. So the Kalandra mechanic, I would say, has been about a 2 of 10 for me. I haven't really found it to be useful. I haven't gotten a single useful piece from it. You know, I have seen that mirror pop up a bunch of times. I click it every time I see it, and every time it's a choice between 2 pieces of trash. And yeah, really not great. I think the Warden Ascendancy, playing around with the re-added tinctures, and I guess I should add those as well. Tinctures, you know, they give an alternative to using a flask as sort of just a pop on. It does add some damage and burns through mana, and then when you hit 0 mana, it turns off. Cool mechanic. I like them a lot. They've been a really amazing damage scaling vector, you know, just an extra thing to throw on a Lightning Strike Slayer, but something that can work with a lot of builds. So I would say like pretty effective, like 7 out of 10. The fact that they only work really by default with melee is maybe kind of their one limitation to them, I guess. The Warden Ascendancy, which does play around with tinctures and kind of has a built-in cooldown of its own, and then can make them work with ranged, although that's fairly expensive to do, you know, to spend an Ascendancy on that. You know, I think it's been okay. It's definitely, it's like a top 10 Ascendancy, but not a top 5 Ascendancy. So I would say probably like a 5 out of 10. It's been all right. You know, kind of sad to see Raider go, since I loved it as kind of just a speedy generalist in the past. That's definitely something that's a little disappointing. There's not really just an Ascendancy built around speed anymore. Gladiator's rework has been pretty successful. They have kind of a built-in crit block. I think Fallen has kind of swallowed up their I don't know, stolen their thunder, I guess. I think when Fallen probably goes away, or maybe just gets nerfed super hard in future leagues, I think Gladiator could really see a rise in value. They're already, I think, right around like 5th or 6th most popular Ascendancy, so wouldn't surprise me to see them jump up after that. I think they've actually been undervalued just because of Swollen, so I would say probably like an 8 out of 10. And then I think rework to Scarabs, I think, has been kind of okay. You know, it still sort of reinforces some of the bad things about the Scarab rework from Necropolis, where it used to be you would kind of do several different things at once. You do like Harbinger and Strong Boxes and Domination all at the same time, and now I definitely think the Scarab system is better now than it was before, but you do basically fixate on a single league mechanic with the Scarabs as they are, and, you know, a lot of people can kind of get bored of that. Having 3 Atlas passive trees definitely is good, but I would say, you know, kind of a mixed bag with the rework Scarabs. Mostly good. I think they, for example, they took a Scarab that I really liked, the Domination Scarab of Teachings, which I really liked. That one gave you a huge XP farm strategy. They killed that, but then they replaced it with the Domination Scarab of Evolution, which just adds like revives guys when you kill them at a higher rarity tier. So it's just like, okay, tons more guys. You know, they didn't just kill Scarabs that were fun, they replaced them with something that was also fun in a different way. So I think decently successful. All right, I kind of lumped the life and armor buffs and Fizz-Take and Azelli nerfs together because, you know, obviously Fizz-Take and Azelli nerfs would just be like a 0, you know? But I think in general, I think this is probably good for the game as a whole to have these changes to defenses, even though I don't love them. You know, I would say that having more life across most characters feels good, but then they definitely nerfed uniques kind of by default, like uniques that would have life on them previously. I guess I'm not really wearing any on this character, but, you know, if you were playing a build that had like a lightning coil or something that would have like 80 life on your chest, now that you can get like 180 life on a rare chest, that then becomes significantly weaker. And that kind of applied across the board for uniques. So uniques definitely took another nosedive in value. They're probably going to have to tune uniques up again. I would say that nerfing Fizz-Take and Azelli feels bad for builds that were really relying on that, like a lot of Pathfinder builds, but I think it probably is better for the game as a whole to do that. So I don't necessarily think it's bad or good, kind of mid. I think that gets you a 5. And then I already mentioned the Flask stealth removal of the Flask attack speed suffix. Doing that as a stealth removal, I think, really stinks. And just kind of generically nerfing Toxic Rain Pathfinder, you know, technically they reduced the mana cost on that, so that made it a little bit easier to deal with, like, one aspect of that. But they nerfed the defense by nerfing Fizz-Take and Azelli, which was pretty much the only thing propping up Toxic Rain Pathfinder's defenses, and getting it, like, I don't know, 500 more life, or even, like, 400 more life, probably more realistically, and like a little bit more evasion doesn't really fix that. And, you know, then that combined with that attack speed suffix nerf is just, that's so much. That's more than 30% less attack speed from Toxic Rain Pathfinder, which is a build that's all about that. So Toxic Rain took a pretty big hit. Like, I did not actually wind up playing it this league. I had intended to, but kind of ran out of time, especially with inclement weather kind of interfering with some of my later league plans. So I would say I did not like this aspect of the league at all. We're going to give that a 1 out of 10, specifically because of the stealth Flask nerf. Okay, I was going through the edit and there was something I realized I kind of glossed over with the league mechanic that I kind of wanted to give a little bit more breath to, and that was the weapon enchants that came from the league mechanic and were from the runes that you farm through various aspects of playing the league. And I think they're pretty creative. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's just very basic, add damage to weapons, and they're, you know, some of this kind of exists as a way to take things like built-in explode mods that exist on uniques, or there's one in particular, fire skills, basically the Mjolnir effect, but applying to fire skills instead, and only applying on axes, like being able to turn a rare axe into like a fire version of a Mjolnir. I think that's pretty cool. Most of the time, I've just kind of locked in this enemies killed by your hits or destroyed mechanic. It's really good being able to, you know, it is an axe mastery. Being able to just never have to deal with on death effects is pretty nice. So I haven't really played around with it that much in terms of playing with different things, but there obviously were some incredibly strong buffs like Shepherd of Souls, or like getting random shrine buff every 10 seconds is kind of fun. Definitely some cool concepts on display here. I think slightly derailed by the power runes being tied to the most powerful you know, obviously, of the different buffs. And unfortunately, those are very rare, very expensive. I'm not sure what they're up to now, but you know, very expensive, and they definitely kept a lot of those powerful enchants from people who maybe didn't have as much to play around with. You know, just as much currency, less time committed to the league, or just simply like, you know, made it harder for people to kind of play around with and experiment. And that's kind of a bummer that there wasn't any more easily affordable way to get them other than just very low RNG from the bosses from this league. So in terms of giving the weapon enchants a numerical ranking, I think about a 6 or a 7 out of 10 is kind of where I would put them. They're not bad, right? They're definitely a huge upgrade from like the massive complexity of Necropolis League crafting. I think we can say a 7 out of 10 thinking about Necropolis League. Really knocked down several points by just the expense of the power runes. Otherwise, I would say this is a pretty great system, but not totally flawless. All right, so let's wrap things up. GGG was incredibly ambitious with Settlers League, and I think it's really paid off. This is undeniably one of the best leagues ever, and real life inconveniences aside, it has been my favorite league. It's insane to me that I'm saying that about a league in which Toxic Rain Pathfinder is the weakest it's been since I've started playing, but I can't lie. I love Settler League. I league started Berserker. I played Melee. I found a natural Mage Blood and 2 Headhunters in this league, and I had an absolute blast for the first month before a combination of a WoW expansion and a series of hurricanes derailed the second half of the league. I'm disappointed that this league is going to have to run for so long due to the PoE 2 delay. With that being said, I am glad the base game is in such a good state, especially after Necropolis League. I really think the game is as good as it has ever been right now. Maybe you disagree, or maybe I'm forgetting some perfect time that once was, but I don't think so. I think the game is pretty unassailable right now. Even if you've kind of gotten bored with an old league, which is definitely understandable, I think the base state of the game is terrific. I think the fresh start is going to be pretty fun. I really like the Lantern of Aramor from Necropolis League, and bringing back the upsides of that without the downsides and without the corpses from Necropolis League is going to be very fun and insanely juicy. So I will probably try to play around with more builds in that event than I have so far in this league. I don't know exactly how much I'll balance between the real Settlers League and that kind of fresh start Settler League. I'll just kind of get into it and see how much I feel like going back, but I think there are a lot of different play styles I haven't yet explored that could be really fun. Also, it's important to remember, but we're still only like a month or so out from the PoE 2 early access launch, and once that drops, we are definitely not going to be thinking about Settlers League, so it's fine, right? I'm just thankful that we have something else that's kind of fun to do in the meantime to tide us over while we wait. Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching, and have fun with PoE. Bye.